All views and opinions expressed in this show are solely those of myself and don't represent or reflect the views, policies, or positions of any employer, organization, or professional affiliations. They're shutting down a literal lifeline right as the world is getting more fragile, not less. Canada is about to pull the plug on its national VHF weather radio service. And, if that sentence doesn't bother you, it probably means your power hasn't been out long enough lately. This is a quick unbuffered about weather radio in Canada going dark and why treating the internet and smartphones as quote-unquote good enough for emergency alerts makes me a little uneasy. So here's the basic setup for this one. Canada has its own, it has this system called Weather Radio Canada. It's their version of NOAA Weather Radio here in the United States. About 225 VHF transmitters scattered around the country, blasting weather forecasts and alerts on those familiar 162 megahertz channels. Think about it. 162.4, 162.55, the same neighborhood as the US stuff. Your cheap little weather radio from Walgreens can scan through. It's been around since the 1970s. It added the same tones, just like we did back in the early 2000s, and it sits there 24/7, quietly doing its thing while nobody thinks about it unless the sky turns that weird green color. And now, Environment and Climate Change Canada has decided that they are done with it. They're shutting off the Weather Radio Canada service, and they're also killing the Hello Weather phone line. It's an old school number you could call to hear an actual forecast with with an official shutdown date of March 16th, which it's not that far away. The transmitters and the infrastructure, they don't vanish that day, but they're slated to be fully decommissioned over the next couple years. The justification for all this is, predictable. Rising maintenance cost, aging equipment, and, quote, more modern and widely available technologies, unquote. Like apps, websites, and the alert ready system on phones and TV. On paper, that sounds logical, right? On the ground, in bad weather, it sounds like wishful thinking. Let me anchor this down into what's happening here in Wisconsin this weekend. We're staring down another big winter storm. That's, pretty normal for us. But the pattern isn't. We're going to have big swings. We're going to have ice. We're going to have wet, heavy snow, wind. Power crews already tired from the last one. You start mentally tracing the failure tree. We got power goes down. Cell backup. The backhaul goes down. Or the backup goes, the backhaul. That's what I mean. The cell backhaul hiccups. A couple towers lose their UPS or their generator. Don't come back online after the power's out. Maybe fiber goes down. Above ground fiber runs get taken out by a tree branch. And suddenly, the point is, suddenly all those modern and widely available technologies start looking a little less robust. When you work in RF or broadcast like I have for as long as I have, you see how quickly the shiny stuff falls apart once the power flickers a few times. A weather website is one power strip away from being useless. A push notification is one overloaded LTE sector away from never arriving. A mobile app is one dead phone battery away from, I guess we just look outside then. Meanwhile, you can pick up a $30 weather radio and a pair of AA batteries, and they'll happily sit in the kitchen. They'll sit in that kitchen drawer for 5 years and then scream at you when the same header hits. That's the difference, though, with that weather radio and the pair of AA batteries sitting over there quietly in the corner in the kitchen or in that drawer, wherever. It'll alert you if something is on the way. That is the difference. The Canadian government is basically saying, we have alert ready now. We have the apps. We have the web. We don't need this old RF dinosaur, even though cell phones are also using RF, but I guess we won't get into that right now. And sure, alert ready is a good thing. It shoves emergency alerts on the phones and into broadcast programming up in Canada, but it is not the same kind of resilience as a dumb VHF carrier coming from a hilltop, often with backup power and a lot less dependencies. One is a layered stack of vendors, backhaul software, and power budgets. The other is a transmitter, an antenna, generator, maybe a little computer system, or even a mic if you want to get a real human involved, and go. Guess which one I trust in a blizzard, or a tornado, or a hurricane? Let's talk about who actually loses here. It's easy to frame this as rural or remote or the north. And yes, folks in the, in the territories and way up in northern communities get hit the hardest out of all this. They're the ones who have the least reliable connectivity, the longest power restoration times, and the most to lose from missing a storm or a blizzard warning, or whatever Canada's equivalent is. But it's not just them. There are people in cities who rely on this thing and don't realize it. Think older folks who bought a same capable weather radio years ago and just expect it to shriek, make that noise when something is wrong. Farmers, truckers, fishers, and people on the road who keep a radio in the cab. A lot of CB radios and ham radios and GMRS radios have weather bands built into them for that kind of stuff. Small community stations, local services, even volunteer fire or SAR groups that quietly treat weather radio as a backup feed. Those pockets still exist regardless of what the Canadian government thinks otherwise. And the whole point of a national public safety network is that you don't find out who depended on it by turning it off and seeing who gets hurt. The argument from the government is basically the coverage, it's patchy, the system is old, and the number of listeners is low compared to the population with smartphones. All true. Probably. But, that logic misses why this stuff exists in the first place. Redundancy is not supposed to win a popularity contest against the cell carriers. It's supposed to be there when the popular option fails. You can't stare at a graph that says 90% of people get the mobile alert and call it a day, say, we're done here. You have to care about the other 10%, because if we're going to be honest, it's often the most vulnerable geographically and economically who fall in that gap. There's also this weird cultural blind spot we have now. If something isn't shiny, app-driven, and analytics-friendly, it gets treated as obsolete, and I'm sick and tired of it. VHF weather radio, it's not sexy, obviously. There's no growth curve, no monthly active user slide, no engagement to show a minister and a deck. It's just RF. It's a flip a switch, broadcast to everybody in a huge range. No subscription, no targeting, no logins. And somewhere along the way, we decided this model is old-fashioned. Instead of realizing it's one of the only communication tools we have that doesn't collapse under load. I think about it all the time. And you also, I think about all the work we do in broadcasting here on this side of the border in the United States to keep signals up under terrible conditions. Backup generators, fuel contracts, battery banks, redundant STL paths, and then watch a county voluntarily walk away from a network that has those properties in favor of pushing alerts through infrastructure that inherently it has proven more fragile. It's insane, especially in 2026, when we're talking more and more about climate change, extreme weather, wildfire smoke, atmospheric rivers, whatever new term we're inventing this week to explain why it rained a lot. It doesn't feel dramatic enough. You'd think, hey, maybe don't decommission resilient national weather warning systems right now. Would be the low-hanging fruit of climate adaptation. Apparently not. The other piece of this that bugs me is how invisible the decision is to normal people. The shutdown is documented, but it's not like there's a big red banner over every weather forecast in Canada saying, hey, by the way, your weather radio is going to stop working soon. Here's what we're doing instead. For a lot of folks, this is probably going to be a silent failure. One day, the radio stops updating, or the voice disappears, or the thing that starts, the thing starts looping old messages and nobody's really sure whether it died or the system did. And the erosion of trust, that still matters, right? Because once people assume this doesn't work anymore, they stop checking it. They stop buying the hardware, and then the next time a public service tries to build on top of RF, there's no installed base left to talk to. Nobody will care. Contrast that to the NOAA weather radio service here in the States. It has its own issues, gaps, and budget fights, but it's still considered part of the backbone. When we talk about it, the emergency alert system, weather alerts, or even that annoying weekly test, NOAA is still in the conversation. Canada is basically stepping out of that game and betting everything on IP and cell networks. Me personally, I'm not taking that bet. So, what do we do with all this? Other than shake our heads, I guess. For me, the big takeaway is this. If you care about resilience, real, physical, boring, old resilience, tech people, the engineers, media folks, you can't assume policy is going to protect it for you now. We have to be the annoying ones in the room saying, hey, okay, but what happens when the power is out for 3 days? What if the fiber backhaul goes away? Who still gets the message then? And if the answer is, well, technically nobody, that's not acceptable just because the spreadsheet says maintaining the old system was a little more expensive. I'm not Canadian. I don't have a say in their budget or what happens over there. And I know every system has to evolve, but watching a country shut down a working nationwide RF weather radio network in the middle of more chaotic climate era, it just feels like we learned the wrong lessons from the last decade. If I ever do a longer episode on this, I'd love to get maybe someone from the environment, Canada, someone from broadcast, and someone from emergency management, all in the same conversation, and just ask, hey, what do you think redundancy actually means in 2026? Because from where I'm sitting, staring at the radar, checking generator fuel for this weekend, wondering which link will die first in the next storm, redundancy still looks a lot like an unfancy transmitter on a hill humming along when everything else has gone quiet. I'm Tyler. You can follow me on Instagram and Threads at tylerwoodward.me. Also, tylerwoodward.me. You can also head over there to get the latest episodes. Subscribe, like the show wherever you're listening. 5-star review helps, or so I'm told. And, I'll catch you next time. Make sure your weather radio's charged and got fresh batteries.